What is up, guys? This is Matt Cox back with an episode of the Saucetown Investor Podcast. Today we're going to cover one of the most hot button topics in real estate, which is the rent versus buy debate. Depending who you ask, you're going to get different answers, but the most consistent answer is kind of that we all need to buy a house. And if we're not doing it, we are following behind. We're paying a landlord. We're losing the game. We're losing the American dream. So I'm going to start out. I think a story is sometimes a good way to illustrate some of these points. So this is about me personally. So I bought my first house. It was actually a townhouse back in 2017. I was 27 at the time, and I was one of my first friends, maybe the first, to buy a house, to be a homeowner in America, which means you are, you're feeling pretty good about yourself at the time. I was a homeowner. I bought this townhouse was at 2931 Southeast Hawthorne in Portland. For those that know Portland, it's a cool spot. It's one of the best, if not. If you're a young person, maybe the coolest neighborhood in Portland. At the time, I was working at a real estate investment company called 10 Bridges. And despite working at a real estate investment company, I kind of had no clue what I was doing. I sort of academically knew what an interest rate was, but didn't really know how it applied to my home purchase or to my home loan or what my monthly payment would be or anything like that. I just knew that I bought a house and almost no one else owned one at the time, and it was cool and I was the man, basically. Another thing, I also vividly remember, this is pretty hilarious looking back. I vividly remember buying it, and then after I had closed, just finding out that there was a $450 a month HOA fee. Like I don't think I knew what an HOA was at the time. And it was just kind of like, oh, cool. Well, $450. I didn't really think about that. Sounds good, and I was making really good money at the time especially for a 27-year-old. And, I felt like everybody knew that I was, I had made it now. I was living the American dream. I owned a house at 27, and everybody who rented was losing. And I got a pretty good deal on it too. My company, we bought foreclosures, and so this house was a foreclosure. I bought it for, I think, $350 or $360. I had access to deals like this. So it's 2017. I buy this place. It's awesome. I'm having people over. I'm hosting parties, all that. Fast forward to 2021, I kind of knew I wanted to move out of Portland, just didn't know where it would be, didn't know it would be New York yet. But at that time, I had done a lot of educating myself and learned a lot more about the math around buying a house. Between the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and HOA, I kind of came to realize that this place was a money suck. I thought I had gotten this awesome deal. And it did. It served a lot of things that had nothing to do with money, which is just having a cool place to live in a cool neighborhood. But, finally in 2021, I realized it wasn't serving my investment goals or my life goals. I didn't want to live in Portland anymore on the life side. And then on the investment side, it was because of how much it cost and how much of how much debt it was putting on my credit reports and things like that. It was making it hard to get additional loans for rental properties. And I knew I wanted to buy more rentals. So I listed it for sale. After a few price cuts, of course I priced it way too high initially because, it's my house and it's special, and of course everyone's going to pay a premium for it. My realtors out there, I'm sure you can relate. You've dealt with clients who were just like me, who wanted who wanted way too much money for their house. So anyway, after lowering it, call back. I bought it for $350, $360, sold it for $380. You take out your realtor fees, your closing costs, the interest and repairs I paid over those years. I lost significant money on what I thought was a smoking deal. Now, this isn't to say that this wasn't a worthy investment. Like I said, it provided me with an awesome place to live in arguably the best neighborhood in Portland. Made tons of memories there. It wasn't an investment from a numbers standpoint, but speaking from a strictly monetary perspective, I would have been much better off renting for those 4 years and investing the money I was spending on the condos elsewhere, stock market, rental properties, whatever. So, it takes me into, that's kind of my story. It takes me into the question, is owning a home really a part of the American dream? Housing, it truly is religion in our country. It is, and always has been fed to us as part of the American dream. There's a sense that you've made it when you buy a home, and that if you're renting, you're somehow following behind. The marketing around housing in America is pretty genius. Like, nothing will get people to spend their money more quickly than getting their emotions involved. I'll say that again. Any kind of sales, you get people's emotions caught up in it, they will buy anything. And nothing fires up emotions more than making people frankly feel inferior. If you don't have this thing, you're following behind. It's keeping up with the Joneses in action, okay? The problem is we often get caught up in living someone else's American dream. Okay, the Joneses, or insert last name here down the street, bought the big McMansion, and we feel inferior, so we better go do the same thing. Guys, I'm saying all this as somebody who directly benefits from this effect. The fact that so many people want to buy houses in America and we're fed this idea that we have to own, it directly benefits me because I own a lot of real estate, and this drives up prices, right? Supply and demand principles. But I don't want to be disingenuous with you guys, and I want you to have all the facts before you decide if you haven't bought already, or if you're thinking of buying, or if you're thinking of upgrading, whatever. So, a lot of people will ask the question, but if I rent, am I missing out on building equity in my home? So, that's an entirely reasonable thing to ask. And it is true in some sense. If you are renting, it's true. You are indeed not building equity in a home. You're renting. It's just the rent goes away each month, and that's really all you see from it. The part they don't tell you, though, is that many people who own their homes are not building much equity either. So I'm going to take you guys through some math real quick. Hopefully your eyes don't gloss over as I go through the numbers here, but just some quick numbers, okay? So for purposes of this blog, I'm going to use blog. I do have a blog as well. You guys should subscribe, mattcox444.substack.com. But for purposes of this podcast, I'm using the median home price in America as of the end of Q1 2024. That was $420,800. I also assumed a 7% mortgage rate. That is about where we're hovering around with owner-occupied mortgage loans at the moment. And lastly, I assumed that a buyer would be putting 6% down on the purchase. So let me recap that in case your head's spinning a little bit right now. $420,000 purchase price, 7% interest rate, and 6% down. 6% down payment, which 6% down on a $420,000 purchase price is about $25,000. So $420,000 purchase price, you're putting $25,000 down. That means your mortgage loan is about $395,000. So in this scenario, in your first month of payments, on this loan. We talked about, you're building equity. Guess how much of your payment is going toward building equity and paying down the principal of your loan? The answer, your loan payment is a little over $2,600, and approximately $324 of that is going toward paying down your principal, i.e. building equity. So you're building almost no equity at the start of this loan. Almost all of it is going toward interest. So the bank that gave you the loan, they're doing really well, but you are building almost no equity through your payments. So, a lot of people will say this and they will go, okay, hold on. This is just the first year of your loan, right? And that's true. Say you're eventually going to build equity. So let's take a look at that. All right. Next, I want you guys to take a guess. When do you think, if you take out a loan in 2024, when do you think the first payment will be in which you are paying more toward your principal than you are paying toward your interest? Meaning you're paying more toward your own equity than what the bank is taking in interest. It would be the year 2044. I'll say that again, 2044, if you took your loan out in 2024. So in 20 years, you would finally be paying more toward your equity than the bank would be taking in interest. Now, with that said, you're not going to be in your house in 2044. A little bit more data on this. Excuse me. The average American lives in their home for 12.3 years. And honestly, that number is skewed a bit by boomers who are, typically empty nesting, and they've settled down into their dream home, and they're not really, they're not going through life changes. They're not having kids. They're not changing jobs. They're not changing cities as frequently, chasing, money or love interests or whatever. They're very settled. For millennials, and I couldn't get perfect numbers on this, but millennials typically are only staying in their home for 6 or 7 years. So if you're there 6 or 7 years, you're paying pretty much all interest. You're not building all this equity that we talk about. Now, I do want to be clear about this. You could build equity if the market goes up, which it has gone up like crazy the last, not as much the past couple of years, but between 2020 and 2022, yeah, if you bought a house, you realize some pretty incredible appreciation in the value of your home. Now, if you're running your numbers based on what happened during those years, I say, good luck to you with that. But it is possible, you can get equity, and you will long-term get equity through appreciation, but you are not getting anything by paying down your loan. So on top of all this, the average property taxes in America are about $2,450. Insurance is almost $2,000. And then this is the big one that nobody talks about. There's a guy I follow. I can't remember his name, but he's very good on the rent versus buy debate. He refers to these as phantom costs. The biggest one is repairs. Nobody includes this. When you're renting, I rent my place here in New York. When you're renting, you just call up the landlord and they fix whatever issue you're having. The toilet's leaking, the shower, this happened at my place the other day, the shower nozzle is just like snapped downward and won't go back into place. It's broken. I just called them and they fixed it. You own the home. You don't have that luxury. That's on you. So as far as repairs, I kind of found a decent average is about $3,000 a year. Obviously, bigger house, that's going to go higher. Smaller house, it's going to go lower, but that's an average for you guys. On top of that, if you don't put down 20% when you buy the house, you're going to have mortgage insurance that you're paying every month. And guys, none of these items, property taxes, insurance, mortgage insurance, HOA if it's applicable, certainly your repairs. None of that is going toward this quote unquote building equity that everybody talks about. So, I mean, the next question that comes up is, okay, Matt, that's great. You know, I get what you're saying, but what are you talking about? You own all this real estate and you're telling us not to buy a home. So I want to be clear. Owning rental real estate and owning a personal residence are very different things. Okay, when you're a homeowner, you're paying all of the items listed above, the mortgage, the insurance, property taxes, etc. When you're a landlord, your tenant is basically paying for these via their rent payment. So you are building equity on someone else's dime. Okay, they're paying all of that, like I talked about above, that huge interest payment that goes to the bank every month. Your renter is paying that. Now, I'm going to, of course, take this opportunity to point out you can't just like throw a dart at a map, buy a property, rent it out, and print money and have your tenant pay for everything. You need to run your numbers, and we do there's plenty of good content out there. We do some of it on this pod about running numbers, managing the property, finding tenants, etc. So most people should probably honestly not be landlords. I'm just using this example to make a point. Okay, purchasing a personal residence and purchasing a rental property are two totally different ball games. Okay, the numbers are completely different. Another question people always ask is, well, if I'm renting, like, why would I want to help my landlord get rich? I'm just paying their mortgage for them. And guys, it's a short-sighted question to ask. Yes, you are helping the landlord build equity and get rich. But here's a question you should ask yourself, and not just when it comes to this topic of being a renter, but just in general, guys, someone else getting rich doesn't make you poor. Okay, the guy or gal that owns the house or apartment that you're renting, them making money off you doesn't mean it's not your loss. The world is not a zero-sum game. I'm sure the company or guy or gal that owns the very apartment here in Manhattan that I'm sitting in right now, I'm sure they're doing really well. And guess what? I'm happy for them. Okay, that's wonderful. Right now, renting makes sense for me. And someone else getting wealthy off me being a renter, that doesn't bug me. We don't go to a restaurant and pay for the food and complain about making the restaurant owner rich. That would sound ridiculous, right? The restaurant owner is providing a service and you're paying for that service. Renting is no different. It's a service. You need housing, okay? Housing is a service. It's something you need in your life and you're paying for it. It's no different than anything else. So some of the benefits of renting, which I've been over, I rent my place here in New York. Sometimes, people they're confused, right? Like Matt, you own all these properties and you rent the place you live in. So it's, I will put the caveat, New York is an extreme market due to a bunch of factors. In fact, I should do a full episode on the New York rental scene because it is very unique. It's not like anywhere else in the country, but it is similar in that in many cases, it makes more sense to rent than to buy. In my case, again, New York's a little more extreme, but this applies in a lot of places. My very apartment, if I owned this instead of renting it, I would probably pay minimum double what I pay for rent. New York's extreme, but right now with interest rates where they are and housing affordability where it is more expensive to rent than to own in 34 of the 35 major U.S. metros right now. And in a lot of them, in most of them, in fact, the difference is significant. So another benefit, guys, is if I want to move, and granted I haven't moved yet, but if I want to, I live in East Village. If I want to move to West Village or I'm never moving to Brooklyn, so I'm not even going to address that. But if I want to move uptown or whatever, I can just move. Like, yes, there's a little bit of hassle. You got to, rent movers and things like that. But it is not the same as selling a place and paying realtors and getting your house list ready and all that. Like, the barriers around moving are so much lower. So at the end of the day, like, the rent versus buy thing is it's a tale as old as time. Buying has always been associated with making it and the American dream, and the telling somebody you rent is kind of, sometimes it's met with kind of like a pat on the back and like a, stick at it, you'll get there someday, bud. And like most things, it's not a cut and dry answer. It's a deeply personal decision on family dynamics, how long you think you're going to be living somewhere, and, of course, the numbers. Okay, so I'm not here to tell you guys, like, don't ever buy. I'm not one of these spreadsheet nerds that's just like, well, here, if you fill in cell C5 and see how it auto-populates to G34, and this is why you should, that's, life doesn't exist in a spreadsheet. But the point is, the numbers do matter, okay? They're not the only thing, but you do need to understand the numbers. So my point here is not to tell you to buy or to rent. That's not my decision. That decision is yours. What I am here to tell you, though, is if you are going to buy, do it because it is the right thing for you or for you and your family. Don't do it because society tells you to, or because you are falling behind if you don't. You are not, guys. Tons of very wealthy people rent. Don't let your neighbor who bought the or your friend from high school who bought the McMansion and is posting about it on Instagram and shaming everybody who hasn't bought a house. Like, don't let it be because of that. Don't let it be because your realtor is telling you that you have to buy and you have to build equity. Guys, a good lesson for life in general is if somebody is giving you advice whose paycheck depends on said advice, you probably need to take whatever they're saying with a grain of salt. Again, guys, I love my realtors. They perform. There's good ones and bad ones, but my good realtors, I do love you guys. But if a realtor is pressuring you to buy a house, do the math. Like, they get paid if you buy a house. So make the decision based on what is right for you, not what's right for the Joneses, not what's right for your realtor. Okay. So there's plenty of good resources online. I'm not going to post like a calculator for you guys. There's plenty of places online. If you just, type in like rent versus buy calculator, where you can run the numbers on it, and then you can see how much the numbers matter versus just, personal things like, wanting to have a place for your family. Like I said, it's a personal decision, not telling you not to buy, but please make the decision that is right for you. Don't get caught living somebody else's American dream at the expense of your own.